Well, thanks again for having me here. Glad to be presenting to everybody and kind of talking about Pheasants Forever and kind of how we look at precision ag and conservation solutions. Just start off brief background. Again, as Heather mentioned previously on the second series, I went a little more in depth. Today I'm going to kind of skim through it, give some examples. So definitely if you have questions, reach out or look back to the previous episode to find out more. So I'm based out of Southwest Minnesota, born and raised in Worthington. Grew up on the gravel roads, both agriculture and hunting and conservation, all passions of mine. Landed in this position with Pheasants Forever as the Ag and Conservation Program Manager, and couldn't be happier, and what a great fit to combine all my passions together. Just an overview of kind of what we're going to look at, what we're going to talk about today. So first we're going to just kind of look at conservation programs as that'll be one of the bases of Alan coming up next, and what kind of programs are out there. And our reference to turn red acres green is taking your unprofitable acres and making them profitable. Pheasants Forever positions that can assist you with that. Talk about precision ag conservation and some examples. So we first start out, as many of you know, you go into a NRCS or soil and water office. There's a lot of opportunities out there. We like to call it the acronym soup or the alphabet soup. It can get confusing at times. People will start throwing out acronyms, you know, ACEP, ACEP, CRP, CSP, RIM, CREP, EQIP, MAWQCP. It can get confusing, right? So there are people out there to help you through this process. And I guess I'd really focus more on, you know, what's the purpose of the practice and what are your goals as a farmer on your property? Is it grassland practices, vegetative practices, wetland practices? What are your goals? Is wildlife and wildlife habitat one of your objectives? Are you looking at getting into cover crops? Are you looking at doing different things as far as nutrients on your farm and nutrient management? Are you looking at doing reduced till, no till, conservation tillage, residue management? Are you looking at water quality, water quantity? That can come in a lot of different characteristics, I guess, as far as treatments to those resource concerns, as far as could be vegetative, could be structural. One of the starts, I guess, to this making every acre pay was Naeem and talking about salinity issues. What are some options for that? Is that one of your issues on the farm that you're trying to fix? Is it grazing, either getting into grazing or changing the way you're doing it as far as increasing paddocks and rotational grazing? Is it erosion? You know, underneath erosion, you can have wind erosion, water erosion, whatever it may be. Is that one of the things you're trying to fix? Or is it just management of existing conservation that's on your farm? So if you have an idea as far as where you want to get to, that can help narrow down the acronym soup. Are you looking at something that's more of a short-term program, intermediate program, such as CRP, short-term, such as EQIP, or is it a long-term easement type option that you're looking at utilizing? And then the second thing is it financial assistance you're looking for or technical assistance? The local offices there, your service centers can help you with either one of them. As far as, you know, wildlife habitat, you know, one of the best programs out there for wildlife habitat is the Conservation Reserve Program, CRP. Underneath CRP, it's not just CRP. There's the general sign up, which is a competitive bid process that you go through, and you're going to meet different resource concerns, but at the same time, different land eligibilities or different land criteria is going to rank differently. The practices are going to rank differently, and you can also get a reduction in payment to increase your competitiveness. Also, there's continuous CRP, which is more based on water quality. So continuous CRP, you can essentially go in at any time, and as long as you meet eligibility requirements, you can sign up. So both of those programs administered through the Farm Service Agency with the technical assistance coming from Natural Resources Conservation Service. And then the other option would be CREP, which is essentially a marriage between CRP and the state's Reinvest in Minnesota Conservation Easement Program. So how can Pheasants Forever help? And it's not just Pheasants Forever, it's all the partners. You can go to universities for advice. You can go to your local service center and talk to NRCS. You can go and talk to your soil and water conservation districts. But I just kind of wanted to focus on Minnesota, what Pheasants Forever has to offer. As you can see on the map on the left, that's our Farm Bill Biologist program. I guess I'd like to just point out the partners below that, NRCS, Bowser, DNR, Minnesota Association Soil and Water Conservation Districts, and through those positions, they're co-located within the offices to assist with voluntary conservation implementation. You can see we've got coverage from Thief River Falls over to Acre, down to Caledonia, Minnesota, and then over to Murray. So scattered throughout Minnesota there, but they're there to assist you in meeting your conservation goals and helping you through the process along with the partners. Second would be, if you look up in the top right, there's some contact information there as well. That's our Precision Ag and Conservation Specialist, BJ Work. He'll look at precision ag data with you, no matter what platform you're utilizing currently. And the goal of that is to look more at a subfield level and figure out ways to turn red acres green. All completely voluntary. Dive in at a subfield level, acre by acre, and look at what can be done to increase that profitability and that return on investment. So our vision through precision ag conservation simply states, and it hasn't changed since the start. We started this in 2015, is to demonstrate through the use of technology and collaboration that farmers will increase their profitability while also providing benefits for soil, water, and wildlife habitat. So now I'm just going to jump into some examples. I'm going to focus on CRP examples, and then I'm going to reuse a salinity example that I used previously, but with one of the focuses being on salinity issues, I felt it was important to share that again. So in this example, turning red acres green with CRP, you can see the maps on there. On the left, that's your profit map. On the right, that's what was implemented in the blocks there, or what were actually turned into CRP and accepted into the CRP program. You can see the before numbers on the bottom and the after as well. And essentially by making that change on roughly 15 acres on that field and taking, just the chronic red acres, problem acres, turning those into CRP, we had an increase of almost 14 bushels per acre, profit increase, and these are over the entire field, of $27 per acre. And it increased the return on investment by almost 9%. So you can see just making a small change over the entire field increases the numbers over the entire field. Next one I'd like to share is it's about 29 acres. This one was also enrolled in CRP. You can see this is issues with water. If you look down on the bottom left, they've got water issues. And really the goal was to, remove those red acres along with making it more manageable to farm that field. Through the enrollment through CRP and including that payment, you can see the difference, and it was significant. So we increased the bushels per acre over the whole field by 17.6 and increased the profit per acre by $23 an acre. And also almost hit 5% increase in return on investment. So again, making changes on parts of the field, not necessarily the whole field. And, you can then take your working capital from those acres that you were applying, apply it to your other acres, and hopefully also increase, your bushels per acre and your profit there as well. So this slide, I just wanted to, I think this is a telling story. You can look at the left, that's a profit map, and on the right is an aerial image. And where you see the, I'll just call them snow caps, the salinity issues, on the right from the aerial photography, you can see and compare on the left with your profitability map what that's doing. And it's almost, I mean, it's pretty much spot on as far as the comparison between the two. The map on the left, anything that's kind of in a reddish color there, was a loss between, you know, $150 and $250 per acre. So what was the solution on this one? What was the preferred method? This individual did have livestock, and they weren't necessarily interested in a program, but they did want to do something. So they went with forage barley for saline soil remediation and used it for hay production. And you can see the before and then also the after pictures. And, you know, overall it was an increase on that field of 7.7 bushels per acre and $23.50 per acre profit. So when we look at solutions for these red acres, I mean, it varies. You can look at programs and perennial cover. You can look at programs and soil health. You can look at adding small grains or a third crop back into the rotation. Do you have livestock? You can add forage as another opportunity to increase your revenue and make every acre pay. Are there future crops and new market ideas, whether it be local or on a broader scale? And the overall goal through this is to, you know, make solutions on those red acres and increase your profit per acre, as I mentioned, increase your return on investment, increase your APH, and lower your risk. And again, there's people out there to help you do that. There's a lot of different opportunities and options as far as programs go and ways to implement them. So I highly suggest, you know, contacting somebody on the Pheasants Forever staff or stopping in, talking to your extension, talking to your local service center, and they can figure out something that works. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Alan, and let you talk more into the different NRCS Farm Bill programs.
All right, we'll switch speaker views here. Thank you, Tanner. Please note that if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen or in the chat box. We also will welcome, if you want to unmute yourself, just let us know and we can unmute you to ask your question live. So moving forward, we have Alan Lepp with the National Resource Conservation Service. He's the Assistant State Conservationist based out of Detroit Lakes. Alan, go ahead and take over.
Thanks, Heather, and I assume everything's showing up right?
You are good.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Like Heather said, Alan Lepp. I am the Assistant State Conservationist for the Northwest area of Minnesota NRCS. I am located out of Detroit Lakes. A little bit about myself and my career. I grew up, I'm an Iron Ranger in Paris, Minnesota. If you've ever heard of that, you probably heard of it because it's oftentimes called the coldest place in the U.S. Moved to Fergus Falls when I was about 10, and that's where I spent most of my, I guess all of my childhood until high school, and then went on to North Dakota State University. Got my degrees there. Or degree, I don't even know why I said degrees. I only have one. Anyways, I got on with the NRCS in actually in North Dakota. I started my career in Lemoore, North Dakota as a soil conservationist. And Naeem talked about a study back in 2008, 2009, a salinity study done by the NRCS. And I was part of that when I was an intern in college. I was in, it was up in Grafton. They told me to go up there for a week, dig holes in 80% clay. And then I spent a few weeks in the summer grinding that rock hard dry clay in a dusty 100-degree building. So that was kind of my start. So I was laughing when he was talking about that study because I didn't lose any fingers from it, but it was close. So what I'm going to talk about today is just who we are, what we are with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS. some general program information, and I'm going to point out a couple options that we have available for salinity issues and other resource concerns on the farm. And I should back up. So after North Dakota, I came back home to Minnesota. I was a district conservationist in Wadena and Otter Tail counties. And then I've been in this position for about 2.5 years. So my current role is I oversee the operations of our entire Northwest area, which I have on a slide coming up, but essentially from Glenwood up to Roseau, and then hit the Canadian, North Dakota, and South Dakota borders. So I cover all of the Red River Valley and a little bit outside of it. So who we are, what is the NRCS? So we're an agency within the Department of Agriculture. We were founded in 1935 following the Dust Bowl. A group of conservationists came together and said, you know, this is a major issue. We have to do something. They went to Washington, and actually, as they went to Washington for the hearing that day, it just so happened there was a major dust storm that rolled right through the Capitol. I should have had a picture of that, but all the legislators came out and looked, because for some of them, that's the first they'd heard of it. You know, they were primarily removed from where the Dust Bowl was happening, and media wasn't like it was today. So anyways, they saw it and said, yep, and we were created. So the founding principles are based on science-based technical assistance to farmers and ranchers on their operation. And we're private lands, 100% voluntary. And we're also, when we were formed alongside soil and water conservation districts. That's what they're called in Minnesota. In other states, they're just soil conservation districts, or every state has their own variation, but in Minnesota, they're called soil and water conservation districts. So that's a local, the local county funded and state funding now, but it really tied together the federal with the local, and that partnership is still very strong today. We are co-located in most offices with soil and water districts, and we work with them on a daily basis. So here's my map. I thought it was a little earlier. So this is my coverage area and what we call our Northwest area. So we do have trained staff in every county. In some counties like Polk County, we have 2 offices, so McIntosh and Crookston. And we have our staff in every one of those offices to assist producers in that county. We also have specialized staff. Some of my staff at the area level is more specialized in agronomists, wildlife biologists, and so on. We also have some grazing specialists, and then in our state office we have other specialists as well who do travel the state. You know, if there's specific issues, they offer training and that. But this is just a map of where I cover and kind of offices where we have them. So like I said, our agency was founded on technical assistance to farmers and ranchers. Actually, when we started, it was a soil conservation service, and then it was changed to the soil erosion service. And in 1994, we became the Natural Resources Conservation Service. So technical assistance is still the backbone of our agency and something we take great pride in. It is zero cost to any landowner or producer. Of course, you pay for us through your taxes, so thank you. But everything we offer, there is no cost at all. And what we offer is personalized plans for every producer and operation. And when I say operation, I mean because you may have it's field by field. We're going to give you a whole farm plan if you prefer that, but it's going to be specific if you have, you know, maybe some land in the valley on heavy clay and some on the ridge our recommendations are going to be different. And again, I want to point out it's 100% voluntary what we do. We certainly do outreach and may knock on your door once in a while and want to talk, but it's your choice to come work with us. So what I encourage my staff to do is we're a conservation agency. And I think a lot of times in the past, you know, there's been a divide between conservation and production agriculture. And really there's not. And I encourage our staff to focus on that, you know, conservation and production go hand in hand, and they should. And when our staff is working with you, it should be, how do we provide environmental benefits and at the same time increase production? Because those things can certainly happen simultaneously. So in the bottom right here, I'm not going to get into that deep, but we follow kind of a 9-step planning process, which this is basically invented back when we started. But so the first step, you know, ideally we're going to be on your farm, on your operation, walking, boots on the ground with you. We want you to do most of the talking, show us what's going on. That's where we're looking at things, inventorying the resources, listening. And then it comes down to talking about, okay, here's an issue. We can maybe run some tools. Some of them Tanner showed. And then we'll present you kind of our alternatives, work them out with you, and move on with the plan. So we'll talk about conservation and productivity going hand in hand. And that's really a big focus for me. So until the 90s, our agency did not offer any financial assistance. We were purely technical assistance. In the 90s, we started with financial assistance programs, and they've grown and grown and grown and became, you know, extremely large today. But, you know, when we talk about, you know, alternatives and addressing resource concerns, first and foremost, what we're recommending should, in most cases, especially on cropland and things like that, increase your bottom line. Maybe not higher yield, but max yield is not always max profit. So increasing the productivity and bottom line of the farm should be first and foremost. And then any financial assistance is helping you implement those with maybe some initial costs. But the goal is that down the line, those conservation practices are paying for themselves. That's what we try to, you know, work with you on and things like that. We're not going to ask you your economics and things like that, but certainly in your, you know, when you're working on it, it's good to pencil those things out. So just a few things here when we talk about conservation, you know, and I'm talking very broadly now, we'll get more specific, but, you know, things when I talk about that going hand in hand, you know, if we're improving soil organic matter through some practices, increasing infiltration, like Naeem pointed out, is so important with salinity issues, you know, reducing runoff, reducing erosion, lowering weed pressure, improving that soil structure and increasing nutrient cyclings. And this is just a short list of some of the benefits, but at the same time, what we're doing is lowering your inputs, fuel, herbicide, fertilizer. We're retaining that valuable topsoil, and we're maximizing the use of inputs so that you're getting the most out of the money you're putting into it. Possibly better trafficability, so you're not getting stuck in the mud. You're getting out there. You're not having to wait maybe as long in a wet spring, and higher productivity, healthier plants through healthier soil. And so, like when I say hand in hand, if we're implementing things like this, we're improving the natural resources, cleaner water, air, healthier soil, and at the same time, increasing the bottom line and sustainability of the operation. So perfect world scenario there. That is what we're shooting for. So I'll jump into our financial assistance programs. Like I said, these have been around about 30 years now. Our flagship program is Environmental Quality Incentives Program. That's EQIP is what we call it. So that was the first one we started. And that's when we talk about specific practices and addressing them, that's what we're going to use as EQIP. Conservation Stewardship Program, that's a newer one. It's been around about 10 years now. That was rolled out in late 2009. Actually, Minnesota is number one in CSP, in acres, contracts, dollars. That's been a very popular program in Minnesota. It's gaining popularity across the rest of the United States. So we're not getting quite as much money in that one as we used to, but it's still a very popular program. And then the Conservation Reserve Program, CRP, which I'm sure you've all heard of. That's not our program that we own. As Tanner said, it's administered by the Farm Service Agency, which is our sister agency under USDA. But that is a program we work a lot on. We're responsible for the technical portion of that program, and then we do have partner staff, SWCDs and Pheasants Forever that assist us with that. So real quick on EQIP, it's a voluntary program, promotes production and through the producer's goals. So it's both. You know, Tanner talks about financial and technical assistance. EQIP is really both, because we're doing the planning, the designs, and so much, and then it does come with financial assistance. So, you know, really, Tanner talks about the alphabet soup, and it's certainly, I'm only going to throw about 3 acronyms at you today, where there's actually, for new employees, I have a sheet for them with all the different things, and it's more internal, but there's hundreds on there. So it's certainly, it does get overwhelming, and I would just want to encourage you to don't get overwhelmed by it, and don't feel like you need to know all the acronyms to work with us. Really, like I said, we want to start with the technical assistance, that one-on-one with our staff and a producer, and then just talk through. So we want to start with, what are the issues on the farm? What are your goals? What are your objectives? What do you want to see out of working with us? And then our staff will fill you in, put you in the right, application for program and all that. So you don't need to be an expert at it. That's what I pay the people I have for. It's certainly, I'm going to just talk about the program so you have a general knowledge, but don't feel like you need to know it all, because like I said, the first step really is reaching out and say, hey, can you come look at the farm? I have some things I want to show you. What can we do with this? So general EQIP eligibility, I'm not going to jump real into the weeds on anything today. I'm giving you a broad view, because I could probably talk about these programs for hours, and I don't want to, and you don't want to listen to me for that long. So just general eligibility that there is. It's private land, like I said. We do cover some things on like tribally owned, but for the most part, it's all private land. So control or own it. Rental agreement is fine. You don't have to own it to put it in one of our programs. You just would have to show a lease. Comply with the adjusted gross income provisions, compliance with wetland and highly erodible requirements, and then just an EQIP plan of operations with us. And that's all the planning process. That's nothing you need, and you don't need any of this to come talk to us and come to the door. So I'm going to mostly talk about EQIP today. I'm just going to touch on Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP. So again, voluntary program. And I'm just going to point out the differences. So it's more of a comprehensive plan. It's a 5-year program with an annual payment. You do receive a base payment if accepted for existing stewardship on operations, and then additional payments for any new conservation enhancements on the operation. So this program was really started to come in after EQIP, where EQIP is a more specific type program. Here's a resource concern, here's an issue I have, we can do this practice, those are set up, and then CSP was formed to come in. It doesn't have to be that way, there's no requirement, but that was the intent of the program. Tanner touched on CRP. I'm not going to dive deep into that. Again, it's administered by Farm Service Agency. We do the technical work. It is a good option for establishing long-term cover on sensitive, lower productivity acres. Turning red acres green, because you are getting a cost share to plant that cover, along with an annual rental payment. So like I said, 10 to 15-year contracts, it is a longer term, but it can be a good use in certain scenarios. So I'll jump into a little bit practices that we offer through financial assistance for saline remediation, and it could be for other issues as well. These are the things pointed out by Naeem, at least that in my mind I heard. He talked mostly on his studies was perennial cover, with removal, haying, grazing, mowing. And so again, you don't need to know these codes and things. I'm just throwing them up there. So what we call it is conservation cover. Essentially, that's a wide span of planting perennial vegetation. It could be for a number of uses. And we have certainly a lot of options with that. It could be introduced species, native species. A lot of people use this now with pollinator plantings that are becoming more popular with the honeybee decline. Another option we'd have that Naeem pointed out is addition of a small grain to the rotation. We call it conservation crop rotation. And that could be as simple as that. If your corn and soybean operation and you have maybe compaction or salinity issues and you want to add a wheat or barley to break up that break a little of that cycle up, that's an option we have. Cover crops are becoming more and more popular. We do offer that, and it can be as simple as rye after a crop. It doesn't have to be a 15-way mix or anything. We certainly offer that, and we'll help you with that. But if it's a wind erosion concern that you're after, a simple small grain after harvest can tackle that. Reduced tillage, Naeem talked about a huge, one of the biggest hurdles in salinity is actually infiltration. So, no-till, strip-till can assist with that, and would lead to, possibly assisting with the salinity issues. Windbreaks, somebody on week 1 asked Naeem about, planting windbreaks, if that would help. And he mentioned possibly catching the salts, and certainly in the valley, with the flat landscape, there's some wind erosion. So, windbreaks were one of the bread and butter practices we had, 40, 50 years ago, and a lot of them have been removed now for larger equipment, but that is a practice that we offer assistance with. I just threw that up. Somebody had asked about it. So I'll jump into, and I'm going to give a disclaimer. I am putting, everybody wants to talk about money. So I am putting the dollars up there. These are 2021 rates. They do change from year to year, usually not drastically, but we do edit things time to time. So I'm just going to talk about a few specific practices and give you an idea of what, the payment rate is, what you're looking at. So conservation cover, again, that's, planting row crop acres to perennial cover. And these payment rates, so introduced species, Naeem talked about mostly the wheatgrass. I believe most of those in Minnesota, that mix he had would probably fall under the introduced with some of those species, but $339 an acre. And this payment rate does account for kind of that first year of foregone income, we call it. So you can certainly plant that mix and fertilize it for less than $339. So that's accounting for kind of the foregone income, the loss of profit on those acres, which if you're doing this on lower productivity acres, like Tanner showed in some of his maps, you may actually be losing money on those acres anyways. So our native mixes would be $387 an acre, and the pollinator mix is higher than that. But if it's for salinity issues, that's probably not the route you want to go. And I'm just going to talk quickly about field border. That's not a practice we use a lot anymore in this part of the world, but essentially what it would be is a 30-foot strip around the field of perennial cover, $306 an acre. Why I want to talk about it is because when Naeem said, a lot of what he's finding and a lot of the issues are on headlands, this could be a good option. Where it's a narrower strip. We're putting in it's 30-foot minimum, but you can go higher. So, and that's similar. It'd be all the same requirements. And these are 5-year practice lifespans on these. Cover crops, again, I touched on that. For a single species, it's $34 an acre. And cover crops can help remove some of those salts, can help with erosion, keeping a living root there, increasing some compaction and infiltration. Our multiple species, which is 2 or more, it's $42 an acre. And we can pay cover crops up to 3 years in a row on the on the same acreage. Excuse me. Residue and tillage management. So no-till and strip-till. So it's $10 an acre just for standard, or if you're adding a herbicide burn down in the spring for weeds, it's $17 an acre. Windbreaks, like I mentioned, not a lot new going in, but it is something I've been asked about it more and more in the past few years up in the Red River Valley. So that's 40 to 65 cents a foot per row, and that depends on the type of species planted. So how does it work? How does everything work? How do you get in with us? So I'm going to give another disclaimer. This is a national slide, 5 easy steps, and I'm a blunt person. We are the federal government. We locally try to reduce all the hoops, make it easy, and it can be an easy process, but it's not the fastest process in the world. I'm going to be honest with that. But our staff are there to help you. Ask questions. That's what I can tell you up front, is ask questions to them. What's the timeline, things like that. But the process is below. Planning. Visit staff. Just make that contact. And then at any time, you can sign an application at any time. So when I say we want to do the technical assistance first, it doesn't mean you have to wait for an application. You fill out an application, that's very simple. Actually, we're moving more digitally, so some of those things can be done online now. And then our staff will work with you on the plan. They'll fine tune it. and it'll get ranked. So I just want to point out EQIP specifically in Minnesota and CSP as well too. We have a high demand. Numbers wise, last year we had $70 million in applications, and we only had $27 million. So the earlier you can start the process with our field staff, the better. So things aren't rushed. You can get a good plan, because it's your plan, and it has to work on your farm. Again, it's voluntary. We don't want to tell you what to do. We want to work with you on solutions that will work, that will help on your operation. And the ranking, I just want to point out, for our ranking system, what we use is we use a locally led process that dates back to the 30s. It's how we were started. We get local input, agronomists, co-ops, implement dealers. We try to work with those people as much as we can, get the input, university folks, and that steers our priorities and our ranking. So for an example, if my county's in the Red River Valley, you know, if producers or agronomists were coming to them and say salinity is widespread, a major issue, and we heard it, and all the local input agreed this is our biggest concern today, our EQIP ranking could be altered to put a higher focus and fund those applications that were focused on salinity. That's what I mean by the locally led process. And I just want to point out, like I said, it's not the fastest process in the world. So this is just kind of our delivery schedule. Typically, again, we take applications year round, and we have specific cutoff dates. So for this year, unfortunately, that did pass. Our staff are working on ranking and assessments right now. But we do have next year. Just because the deadline for this year passed doesn't mean you can't call them today and start the process. So typically we approve contracts in the spring, the summer, and as soon as the contract's approved, you can start work. And the payment process is you complete the work, call us, we come out, payments made. See, I'm about out of time, so I want to leave some time for questions. And so again, this is a website, and I can send it out to. This will get you to our directory with staff contact information on there. You can reach out to me as well. And like I showed on the map, we have offices. Our offices are currently, you know, it's a different scenario with the COVID pandemic, but certainly make contact. We're available, and we will assist you with all your needs. So with that, I will give it back to Heather and see if we have any questions.
Thank you, Alan. And just so the attendees know, we will send out the contact information for each of our speakers in our final thank you email at the after the conclusion of today's session. So Angie, do we have any questions?
We do. So there was a specific question asked in the Q&A box, and Naeem did answer that. And so if folks want to take a look at that question and answer, go ahead and look in the Q&A box under the answered tab at the top.
So Angie,
okay.
can
Yes.
I, add some, points to that answer? Because
You bet.
when I was typing it, it was becoming a bit too long. So Matt, if you're listening, that's a very good question. And this is where the importance of, when you gave me the range 3 to 7, honestly, it's a big range of EC.
Can you read the question?
Yeah, I could read the question. So Matt is a crop consultant, and he works near Minot, North Dakota. He said, I have a grower looking to plant his saline areas to a cereal crop, which is barley or oats, which would be very good for forage, with EC ranging from 3 to 7. in these areas. Could we try some type of legume mix with the cereal to increase protein in the feed? Any legumes you could recommend that have higher tolerance to higher EC areas? So that was his question. And I'm going to read you my answer quickly, and then I'm going to add a couple points. So I asked him a question. I said, "Hi, Matt, can you please give me a specific EC along with the method that was used to analyze it?" And my rationale for asking this question was that if the EC is between 6 to 7, and the units could be decisiemens per meter or millimoles per centimeter, they are the same. By using one-to-one method, roughly it could be 2 or even higher times more. So that means it could be 12 to 14. No annual crops will survive. So we should forget about legumes. Even barley and oats won't survive. But even if your soil EC is analyzed through saturated paste method, and if it is close to 7, we would have a hard time establishing a good barley and oats cover. And legumes are not as salt tolerant as these cereals. Now, it depends also whether it's in the first 6 inches or the deeper depths, because these plants can adopt by keeping their roots shallow. So if your soil EC in the first 6 inches is, say, 3 or 4, and if it is analyzed through saturated paste method, yeah, barley and oats could provide you a very good stand. And you could have some clovers. Clovers are generally more tolerant than, say, way more tolerant than peas, field peas, or some other kind of peas, as well as alfalfa. That would be our best bet. But the first question, like I asked you, again, you could type it in the Q&A, or you could unmute yourself. You have to give me a specific EC. This is why when I was presenting, I was emphasizing on not just getting the number, but what method was used.
And if anybody would like to ask a question live, please raise your hand and I will unmute you as we go through the question and answer session. So.
Okay, so a couple more questions here. So Alan, you mentioned that this year's sign up date has already ended. Do you know next year's?
Not specifically yet, Angie, but like I said, we take applications year round. So the cutoff date, and we do announce those, we always announce them 30 days at least before they are. But our schedule is typically pretty much consistent, or we try to. So it'd be, summer, fall type time. So then throughout the winter. So ideally the process is in the spring, summer, when there's not a foot of snow and 20 below, we're on the farm, we can see things, we're doing our planning through the fall, we're taking applications through the fall, then is the cutoff. The winter, our staff are working on finalizing the plans in the office, things like that. Funding is in spring. That's our typical gold schedule. Things get messed up, especially when there's a new farm bill, because we have to get our money and things like that. So that's our typical schedule.
Okay, thank you. So Tanner, you showed that map with your farm bill biologists, and you also had, like, I think it said 1 through 4, you had different regions. What if I farm outside one of those shaded counties? Can I still work with one of your precision ag or farm bill specialists, or are they just kind of married to that particular county or region?
Great question, Angie. No, not married to a specific area. That's just more where they're located physically. Generally speaking, with the partners, if somebody can stay in one spot, one office, it just makes life easier. But as far as traveling to get to areas outside of the shaded counties, like our precision ag and conservation specialist, we only have one, that he covers Minnesota. So we're more than happy to visit you wherever you are, ideally on the farm. We'd like to walk it. We'd like to see it. We'd like to hear what your objectives are. and then we can kind of go through planning processes and work with partners from there. So don't get caught up in the shaded colors on the map. If you're interested, reach out to the closest one.
So Alan, this is something I've always wondered. So you talked about how many millions of dollars of applications were put in for your programs, and you only have a limited amount of money. So is that a nationwide competition? Is it in the state? Is it in the county? How does that work, the competitive process?
Yeah, good question. For EQIP specifically, each state gets an allocation. So you're not fighting against, while locally you're not fighting against. And then now what we do is we break it down, actually what we call our teams. So we break down our EQIP allocations, give each team, which are 3 to 5 counties. So each of those counties or teams for us has a pot of money, and that's where they can work with the local agronomists, soil and water districts, all the local partners, and say, okay, here's our money. What's the highest priority for it? And then anything's eligible, right? I just mentioned 5 practices today. We have 100, but doesn't mean any of them's not eligible. But if there's a consensus, this is the priority. So, yeah, we do have specific pots of money for to cover every county in the state.
And then sort of related to that, is there a limit in program, like a dollar limit for an individual operator?
Good question. The Farm Bill has a limit. There's a lot of payment limitations. I don't want to get into the specific because that's a deep topic. And then we do have some payment caps on certain practices. So like cover crops, for example, would be $15,000 a year, right? But yeah, I'll say the Farm Bill cap is $450,000.
Okay, thank you. So we now have the 3 of you all together here. We obviously wanted to thank you for your time and your presentations. And I was just wondering if there's anything else that you wanted to share with our attendees here today. Something that you may have missed talking about, or that you think is of particular concern that you'd like them to take with them going forward.
The only thing I would add is my staff, along with Tanner's, in our offices and soil and water districts, we're here to help you. Like I said, we have staff in all of our counties, and we just want what's best for your operation. And just give us a call, email, and unfortunately, you can't walk in the door and come see us face to face, which is what we prefer. But if you're good with it, we will come to your farm. So that's all, Angie. Thanks.
Great. Tanner?
Yeah, I would second what Alan said. Here to help. It's obviously your property. You've got your own goals. So we're going to look at what you have and what you want to do and find something that fits. Conservation does pay. It's not a competitive process against, production agriculture. It can all work together, not only over the operation, but even individual fields. So if we start, diving in and looking at an acre by acre solution, whether it be salinity or wet soils or sandy soils or whatever it may be, there's opportunities out there to increase that overall profitability, along with providing those alternative benefits to whether it's water quality or wildlife or soil or whatever it may be. They work together, I guess would be my point that I'd like to emphasize. And it's a whole system. It's not individual outlooks. Our natural resources, the land, it all works within a process and can be symbiotic. So with that, thank you for having us. Definitely appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out.
And then Naeem, the one thing, I mean, what a complicated topic. Salinity, sonicity. So much of it is a kind of a black box. We can kind of see salinity issues maybe at the soil surface certain times of the year, or like the field behind you right now. I think you probably see that most times of the year. But can you talk about just how darn important soil sampling and data is to making informed decisions?
Yeah, it's very important. Like the pictures I was showing, if you ask me, so in Pakistan too, I did this kind of a work. And then, and I'm not saying I'm by any means I'm an expert, but you know, I dealt with these problem areas for about 11 years. And then there was a gap, but then from Langdon, I've worked with these areas for about 9 years. If you ask me, can you look at this land and tell me what are the issues and tell me what should I plant? I would tell you no. We'll need to take a soil sample and get it analyzed for the test we are talking about through the right methods. And I would say one thing, 15, this is a very conservative number, 15 to 20% of the land, and I'm pretty sure it's the same situation in Minnesota. When we talk about profitability, I've heard many producers talk about that their yield monitors in their combines show very high yield when you're going over the good areas. Good areas, no problem. You plant whatever you want. You'll get the best yield out of it. Well, that's your profitability or yields will decrease overall when you go to these problem areas. We got to do something different. And if you want to do something different, I would suggest one thing. Don't just take, say, my word for it or anybody's word for it. Do your research. This is what I like to do. Sometimes my wife criticizes me that I think too much. And I do for about certain things. Like it took me 44 years to decide that I want to get married, for example. Don't take that long, okay? But you should think it through. Please do not hear an advertisement on TV. I hear farmers saying, say soil testing. If you take a 4 feet deep soil sample, and if you want to separate, you know, each depth and want to get it analyzed through AC, SAR, and pH through saturated paste method, and you got your cation exchange capacity analyzed through sodium saturation method. I'm just going to quote you NDSU soil testing lab. With all those complete, you know, package, you'll pay $121. Okay. And then I hear people, oh, this is expensive. And then the next sentence is maybe we should tile the land. So my question is, you are looking at something which is way cheaper, you know, and it'll help you plan better. What are your options? You know, please make educated decisions. I think that our job is not to tell you what to do. Our job is to help you make up your mind. And the best thing, if you go to a doctor and then that doctor will say, I don't need any test. I'm just going to go and take you to the operation theater and, you know, we'll just work on you, you know, and cut you up and this and that. Would you like it? You know, wouldn't you be saying, can you do some x-rays or other things? So make educated decisions, and we got to do something different with these problem areas. I'm actually very happy that Alan mentioned those that Acre program, because sometimes for some people it's just a push, you know, if they get a little bit of assistance. I'm really glad that the programs he mentioned, you know, help people. It's not going to pay for everything, but it's something. So that would be my message.
Well, thank you very much for your message. And I would imagine all of you are available to chat through phone or email with our attendees for individual questions.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Great.